Bill Thoreau wrote that most people lead lives of quiet desperation. They never sing the song of their heart. Something gets in the way of our desire, our capacity to create. What holds us back? And how do art and music and beauty help young people realize the potential that they've got?
Well, I think that fear tends to define adult behavior, the fear of something. And I believe that this preoccupation with wealth, empire building, bigger house than the Jones, 2 cars instead of 1, bigger school for my kid, really is a preoccupation. And that while you can be free to accumulate all of this stuff, at the end of your life, you can't take any of it with you. It is my view that you also are obligated to do something for other human beings. We're citizens of the planet, and I don't believe that the intense pursuit of wealth and asset accumulation gives you an excuse for not caring about someone other than yourself. In fact, I believe that your life will become better if you care for somebody else, because that's where the substance comes from. Life is ultimately about values, caring, being cared for, relationships, history, future, and so forth. And I believe that by embracing the circumstances of other people who are less advantaged than you are, in a way has a very powerful redeeming quality in terms of validating the quality of your life.
Well, what would you say on that to business students and students of leadership who oftentimes we study things that are really removed from the human suffering that's around?
I believe that business students who are being given an advantage, a superior education, contact with corporate leaders, opportunities for wealth accumulation, have a special obligation to go out and seek opportunities to give back. You don't need to have them come and looking for you. You should be looking for them. Because it's my belief that if you really are going to be serious about achieving a balanced life, if you want to provide your kids with a good, solid role model for how to live a purposeful life, it means that you find and engage the opportunities to help others, and it happens to be 5 minutes away from where anybody lives in this world. The homeless shelters, the runaway shelters for kids, the drug rehab programs, the vocational programs for welfare mothers. There are lots of nonprofits doing extraordinary things who need good business acumen, who need the skill sets that many of these young first and second years have. And it's my belief that it really becomes a quid pro quo. One helps the other, everybody grows, nobody loses.
We spend a lot of money on training, on leadership training, on education in this society. The arts usually come in last. Art, I have a son who went to music school, daughter in art school, and the joke is I got to work the rest of my life to support them. The arts come in last. Yet what you've done is you've put the arts first. You put the creative arts first. What do you see as the connection between the creative arts and the way people can lead rich lives? And second, what's the connection between the creative arts and your own leadership?
Well, entrepreneurs are fundamentally artists in terms of the psychology that they employ when they look to the future. The entrepreneur comes along and says, I can triple the price of the cost of a chicken, and people like Bill Strickland's wife are going to line up at 7 o'clock in the morning to buy this $14 chicken that you could buy at another grocery store for $6. Why? Because it's organic, it's nutritional, it's healthy, it's humane, and so forth and so on. And that value proposition has catapulted Whole Foods, to great pinnacles that would have been unapproachable years ago, because they found that the quality of life and the product are not unrelated to each other. You also go to a Whole Foods facility, they're very beautiful physically. They employ local artists. In our case, they sell our orchids in Pittsburgh, so they have our product right there on the shelf. And the demographics of the people who go there would be very sympathetic to the orchids and the story behind the orchids. So they have healthy food, healthy environment. They came up with a new concept, it's called friendly employees, who actually happen to like working at the place. The last time I visited one, they had a jazz band over in the corner doing samba music in a grocery store. so that these people are smart enough to combine all the elements of the creative life and put it in a commercial context. So these things are not as unrelated as they might appear. You know, Howard Schultz, who's a friend, came up with the concept of creating an environment and coffee to go together. It grew out of sort of the coffee house movement of the 60s and 70s in San Francisco. And I once asked Howard, who I know, and I've spoken to his leadership group worldwide, Howard, what provided you with an opportunity to think that people would buy a $3.50 cup of coffee when they could buy it for 50 cents? Like my wife, who drives out there on Sunday morning to give you $4 for a 50-cent cup of coffee. He says, your wife's not buying coffee. She's buying a cultural experience that includes coffee. That's exactly right. The demographics of the people who go there, read the New York Times, read the Wall Street Journal, buy jazz, by the way, who are willing to invest in the community, who are looking to companies that have integrity about where they get their product and how they sell it and what they give back. It's a value proposition. So that quality and good business sense are not exclusive, mutually exclusive. They're complementary.
So what's gone wrong? We're facing probably the worst economic times, certainly in my memory, probably in my parents' memory.
Greed is cancer. At the end of the day, greed is spiritual cancer. When you get to the point when the wealth that you accumulate has no relationship to your ability to survive in a quality way, it becomes a cancer. And it gets to your brain and it gets to your spirit and it eats away at you. You're fundamentally no different than a drug addict who just thinks if I can just have the next fix, if I can just get to that next million, it's going to put me over the top. And what you realize is, ultimately, it has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with your wife and your kids. It has to do with the people in your community who admire you without benefit of your wealth. It becomes a measure of what you do with this accumulated wealth in terms of what you do to help others as the result of this opportunity. The wealth is only a device to do good, in my opinion. You can't hoard this stuff. There's only so much of it you can consume. And it seems to me when you far outstrip your ability to understand that, it becomes a form of mental illness. And I think that's why you can get these kind of bizarre presentations of people who actually think they're entitled to this kind of wealth, whose work to accumulate it has absolutely nothing to do with each other. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for any human being to be in a position like that. I was watching the History Channel, and they did a whole piece on Einstein and his life and how he was educated and the fact he flunked algebra and was branded, and incompetent, who wouldn't amount to anything and so forth. And they watched his life develop and how he developed his theory of relativity. And the short version of the story is he went the opposite way from all the conventional physicists, and he postulated the concept with a series of very simple, logical, mathematical, and musical tones in his mind. He figured out the theory on the piano, by the way, that light and energy were interchangeable, that they were not separate entities, they were one and the same. They were opposite versions of the same phenomena. I think what I'm discovering is that rather than think that saving poor people, as the Dalai Lama and others are doing, by doing that you save yourself. You don't just save them.
Yeah.
As strange as that may sound, the cure for the cancer that's troubling a lot of us is actually to go further into this conversation, not withdraw further away. And I'm just on the edge of where I'm going with that thought, but I'm convinced I'm on the right street. I think this is well beyond charity. I think this has to do with the survival of the species.
I listened to Arlo Guthrie once say, well, there's a lot in the world that needs to be changed, but you can't do it for yourself, you can't do it for the world. And I think you're right, those things are connected.
Absolutely, man.
We're doing it for the world, and we end up doing it for our...
At the end of the day, I'm convinced that the cure for the spiritual cancer on the planet is helping those who have nothing, and that we will find our own redemption in the process of doing that. That's what I'm just starting to get around the edges of. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And ultimately, I'm doing this because it is saving me. It has given me a path to a life that is meaningful, so that the last moment of the last day when I'm here, I have memories that I can reflect on, because that's all you'll have, by the way. So you either have good memories or you have no memories. I think it's somewhere in there.
That's a nice way to put it, because you think about the musicians that I know, they're making music for other people, but they're doing it
At the end
for
of the
their
day,
souls.
they're doing it for the souls.
Right? They're doing it for
exactly.
their souls. There's a wonderful story by James Bald when he wrote in the 40s called Sonny's Blues. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, I know
I'll send it
Yeah.
to you. Suppose you had to build one more building, except this time it's a graduate school of business. What would the curriculum look like there?
I would find the best and the brightest across discipline, people who run real businesses. I'd get guys like the chairman of Costco to give a lecture. I'd get Schultz in here. I'd get Jeff Skoll, who put eBay together. I'd get Michael Dell. I'd get artists and jazz musicians and poets to give lectures at a business school. I would like these students to become familiar with people who are innovative. You know, Jackson Pollock was an innovator. He looked at a white piece of canvas and saw a picture. And everybody said, "We don't see any picture." He says, "Well, I do. And if you just sit still, I'll show you what it looks like." That is what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur is a guy like Jeff Skoll who says, people will go crazy to have the opportunity to bid against each other for some beads that they can't find in a retail environment. And they will pay a fee to do it. And everybody said that's crazy, and no bank would give them a loan. So they basically financed this thing with credit cards. And you know, $10 billion later, personal wealth, people were right to validate Jeff Skoll's concept of a commercial market. It's basically a market that he and Pierre Omidyar and Steve Wesley and those guys sort of visualized. And that's the kind of visionary, that kind of process of thinking, those are the guys you have to put in front of your business students.
If you think about your own career as a leader for a minute, how have the creative arts, how's art and music influenced you?
Well, it's kept me grounded, first of all. So it keeps me in touch with my feelings and my sensibility, which I am not ashamed to wear on my sleeve, because I'm very proud of the fact that I do have a sensitivity toward environment and color and compassion and so forth, because I apply that as part of the ingredients to cure my students of the cancer they're suffering. It's part of the medicine. It's part of my occupational strategy. So it isn't art to have a nice day, it's the art to change the way you think about yourself and think about the world. It also is a source of great energy. To have a Dizzy Gillespie or Herbie Hancock come to our center on a Wednesday, the place is buzzing, it's alive, and that oxygen fuels learning because your brain needs fresh air. And these artists do that in some extraordinary ways, so that the traditional way of thinking about a school is turned upside down. And so what we really say is that it ought to be a celebration of life/learning, rather than a place in which you suppress learning. You increase feelings, you increase celebration, and when you do that, people's brains function differently. They function in a much higher order, and you get innovation and creativity, and then you have these aha moments that now occur in my center every day, not every month. It's literally the culture that we have created. And out of that culture comes innovation. That's why you get orchids, that's why you get jazz, that's why you get real estate, and all of a sudden we're crafting all these fancy, complicated relationships that could not have been done had we not infused an artistic point of view into the conversation.
What would you say to someone sitting in the audience today who is absolutely blown away and inspired by what you said? They want to know what to do next.
Well, the first thing somebody who's inspired by watching this show can do is to come to Pittsburgh. Get in a car, get on a plane, and come up and see it for yourself. That doesn't cost anything. That's just a little time, a little effort. Secondly, we need to begin to get our conversations developing with these individuals to begin to figure out strategies to build these centers here in Charlottesville, in Richmond, D.C., or wherever they end up. And every center that we've built has grown out of a relationship from a speech. somebody's in the audience that says, have you thought about Cincinnati and Detroit? That's how all the centers are being created. And I believe that many of the graduate students who are here, who may be the beneficiaries of seeing this work, wherever they end up, they need to get associated with the not-for-profit in their community that is doing innovative work. And if there is no such thing, then we ought to create one. And they could be the leader, as far as I'm concerned, to make that happen.
Terrific. Thanks.
Thank you.